your pictures. Okay, you say you can bring them up here. Good,
Going
thank
live
you.
now.
Okay, go ahead.
A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers. We want to take the opportunity to welcome you to another Let's Talk. We are delighted, as usual, to be with you on the airways and trust that you are having a wonderful afternoon. We are continuing our discourse this afternoon. And today we are talking with another retired president. For the last few weeks, in fact, for the month of May, we have been talking with retired presidents, hearing from them about their experiences and particularly their concerns for the future of the church and for the work of the Lord. Last week we had a rebroadcast, and that was essentially because, of course, we had my son graduated from Montemorelos University with his medical degree, and so I had to be attending the graduation exercises last Sabbath afternoon. We are continuing today, however. We have today another, in fact, the final in our list of retired presidents. Not that these are all the retired presidents around, but these were the ones that we were working with for the last few weeks. And we have another very special guest today. But before we introduce him, we would like to invite you to have a word of prayer with us. Almighty Father and our God, be with us and grant us your peace and your wisdom as we go into today's broadcast. We pray that you will be with our guests and grant that as we share together, that we will receive inspiration as we seek to understand, comprehend the challenges ahead. Just take full control of today's proceedings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, friends, welcome again. And as indicated, we have a special guest with us. We have today Pastor Silton Browne. Pastor Browne is retired president from the North Caribbean Conference. He has served with a distinction. In fact, before becoming president, of course, he served as a pastor in several of the territories of the then North Caribbean Conference. And then I remember him clearly serving as the youth director. And what a youth director he was. He later became the executive secretary and later on president. We are delighted to have him with us. He is now retired, enjoying his retirement. He will tell you about some of the things that he does during his retirement. Pastor Silton Browne, welcome to Let's Talk.
Well, thank you, Dr. Greene. It's an honor to be on your program. First of all, first things first, let me commend you highly for the achievement of your son. Congratulate him for me, and I want to congratulate you, the parent, for the good job you have done there. I had the opportunity of watching that graduation, so I indeed saw him go on the stage and got his diploma, etc. So because I have a great nephew who was himself graduating at that same graduation, and so I was able to see your son and Miss Semper, Dr. Semper's daughter, graduate as well. So know that I appreciate the achievement here and commend you highly.
Thank you so much.
If I may be mischievous off the bat, since I'm giving commendation at this stage, let me commend you highly for not be having the first question why I am dressed so terribly for this very important interview. And and I want to commend you for not asking that question. And so I feel almost guilty for as you may say, leaving you in the dark on that one, because as I approach the time and head into the meeting, my wife accosted me, "Why are you in a t-shirt?"
Well, you're retired. You're free to do what you want.
You see, and I thought one of the first points I could make from it is that when you're retired, you have a certain level of freedom to not be circumscribed by all of the action of 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 of, of of all of the action of what we call the active service ministry. And and so I enjoy this, but the truth is, let me take you off for those who may be both disappointed and or angry. Let me beg them not to be angry. It is part of my slash protest, if you want to call it that way, and or choice to make a point because of what happened. What I did on Wednesday, and I was in this shirt on Wednesday, but that is to for me to address towards the end of your program, because I have taken note that you have had a number of retired persons before, and so I've followed those, watched them, and I'm kind of almost able to anticipate some of your questions. So I
Okay.
chose to be radical in view of having a preview of some of what's happening there. So that's why I've chosen, as it were, to address the and also again, I'm not sure, I am not very tech savvy, but I know you are, and I commend you highly for that. And so I have sent you a number of pictures from my life, and in case you're able to share, I'll be able to make a point or two down the road. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a few things to look forward to. I want to hear the explanation about the protest with the t-shirt, but we will get there. We will get there. But let's begin at the beginning. Uh,
Okay.
you are well known throughout uh, North Caribbean Conference, South Leeward Conference, and to some extent, some of the other territories in the Caribbean Union. But of course, we do have a lot of people who listen outside of the Caribbean Union. So can you share a little bit about your early beginnings? Where were you born, and what was life like for you as a child?
Okay, thank you very much. I was born in Liberta Village to Clarence and Estella Browne.
Liberta Village,
And
Antigua.
Liberta Village, Antigua, of course.
Yes.
I'm assuming too much now. Forgive me. Yes, Liberta Village, Antigua. So I almost want to tease Doc my good friend who you have on the program as your guest, Dr. Eugene Daniel, who was the town boy. I am the country boy. I am from
Okay.
Liberta. I'm raw country, and I grew up there. I grew up there in that village, attended the Liberta Seventh-day Adventist Church. Later on, after the one church was burnt, they called the next one New Bethel. So I was around. I lived next door. My first years of life was next door, not just in Liberta Village, but I lived next door to the church. I used to assist the deacons in ringing the bell sometime and toll for funerals, because in those days when you didn't have radio immediately and radio announcements, so when somebody dies, you had a code, and you will have a code for the male and a code for the female, and if it's a child, you do a quick fast beating. And I used to actually, because of our location, I would help to go and even toll bells and so on, assist the deacons from my boyhood, before from my childhood, so to speak.
Now, in anticipation of somebody asking me later on, I'm going to ask you, because a few weeks ago, in fact, last week, we had a rebroadcast of George Browne, who was born in Santo Domingo, but grew up in Liberta Village. And he's Browne, and I anticipate somebody asking me if there's any relationship between Silton Browne and George Browne.
Well, very much so. That is correct. George's father and my father are brothers. His father was Uncle T. Uncle T, he was Theophilus, whatever. And so we used to just call him Uncle T. So, yes, George and his siblings are our first cousins, just like several other people. Auntie Ernie Shillingford, she's the daughter of a sister, Aunt Dora, etc.
Okay, so
And
it's
there's Burchell Browne is one of the children of that family too. Burchell is he was not a Seventh Adventist, but his children, some of his children became Seventh Adventists. So Arnaud and all of his family there. Arnaud is his child, my first cousin. That family is where I'm at, yes.
it is always inspiring, I must say, to hear of individuals who were born to Seventh Adventist parents and who are still very actively involved in the church. One of my observations over recent times is that a lot of the leadership in the church today are what we call first generation Adventists.
Wow.
Lots of our children no longer attend the church. So when I come across somebody who can consider themselves to be second, third, fourth generation Adventists, it gives me a sense of joy to know that, parents somewhere along the line did something well in ensuring that lineage, so to speak, continues.
I appreciate that. And yes, I am now appreciating even that aspect for my own life, because when I came home to Antigua, when Liberta was celebrating the 115th anniversary of the church, I I was able to get into a good bit of the history of the church, and that history pointed to my family. In fact, my mother, who is Estella Browne, when I heard the history, which had the crusade early in the year, and early in the year, and the baptism coming somewhere about March or April that year, before I then recognized that the year of that entry into the village was the year my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, actually passed by that crusade and was impressed with what she was hearing, and got my maternal grandfather, Thomas Simon, who was the lay preacher in the village for the, uh, and went to several congregations or villages as such. She got him to come and hear, and then he became a Seventh Adventist. And from my reckoning, it seems as if my maternal grandmother was about 3 months pregnant with my mother when she was
Mhm.
baptized. So, because my mother was born in November of the same 2000, 1907.
Okay, interesting. Well, Pastor, why don't you tell us about yes, you were born to Adventist parents, and the fact that you are a retired president meant that you stayed in the church. But can you remember when you got baptized? What were the circumstances that led you to personally want to make a decision for Jesus?
Thank you very much. Let me, to that question, since this is not a court scene, I don't have to be overly what you may prescribe by, but let me introduce my answer to that question, to making the very important point that I am clear that at some time in my young years, I might have been between 8 and 9, my mother spoke to me about life and Jesus and sex and the whole little thing in there, and my need to commit to Jesus. I would have to say that I was led to Christ by my mother somewhere around 8 or 9. Okay, don't remember the exact age. However, now that having been said, the churches in Antigua, as far as I know, but let me speak for Liberta that I'm sure about, we had active elders who conducted routine, what we call baptismal classes. There were Bible classes preparing people for baptism. And so you had to go through that for a period of about a year or so. And so Brother Eric Joseph was the Elder Eric Joseph was the one who was functional about my boyhood and who was very capable in teaching the class. He saw me as being very interested. And the truth is, uh, because of my location also so close to the church, I was able to relate to what he was teaching, but I saw the dynamics of church life. And by that I mean it's not all that so positive. Well, not negative either. But the amusing thing is, I after communion, when before you're baptized, you can't take communion. I actually was baptized at I think the age of 13, 1962. Um, and and by the time I was ready, having completed the classes and qualified, so to speak, to be baptized, they they just had, I think, the All Saints Church, dedicated and whatnot, and they wanted to have me baptized with, well, some of my group in the All Saints font. And I remember standing out and say, I want to follow the example of Jesus. I want to be baptized in running water. Jesus was baptized in the River Jordan, so I'll wait for the sea. And so I was baptized by Elder Pramdas in the Falmouth Bay, Falmouth Harbor, if you want to call it that, in 1962. And so talking about some of the things when I say the dynamics, one of the things that two things that grieved me as a boy growing up around the church was that we, the younger ones, couldn't get communion when the older ones seemed to be able to be getting a little something in church. But then the worst part is after the communion service in the evening, I watched Brother Eric Joseph come to take care of the remaining portions of the emblem, and I watch him light that fire, place the remaining bread on that fire. And when the bread had just about completely burnt out now, then he threw the remaining wine. And for me, at that stage, I would have been so glad to get a little taste of that grape juice. And to watch him throw anything on the fire was quite traumatic to me at that stage as a little boy. But I had that sort of exposure around the church.
I suppose that helped you, when you eventually became a pastor, to be
Oh,
able
yes,
to explain to the young children, the
exactly.
significance of all of that. Now,
Exactly.
we don't have much time, so I want to jump into some heavier stuff now. So quickly, can you give us an idea of what led you to become a pastor? You were growing up in the church, you were actively involved. You chose to become a pastor. You could have chosen to become anything else.
That's correct. That's correct. Again, a fairly well. I'll try to be brief, but it's kind of important to understand. After finishing elementary school, teacher Mona, then going to Grace Hill School, that's about the same time. Shortly thereafter, I was in elementary school that they built that school over in Liberta, what we call the Barrel Beef School, the new school. Mr. Hamilton was a contractor, all that. Remember when it was being built, etc. And then having been at that school for maybe 2 years or so was when they had the first free government secondary education scholarship program. And so I was part of that group of 120 children on the island of Antigua who after that examination would be made the Golden Grove Secondary School. So I am one of those initial students of the Golden Grove Secondary School, 120 of us that went to that school. However, after about 3 years at that school, the government needed the space and they chose to they needed a space for the village government primary school. So they converted that secondary school by sending some of the students to grammar school, some to girls high school, and some to Princess Margaret School. The general pattern was those who were exceptional in math and science went to grammar school and high school, and the others went to Princess Margaret School. I was in that number. And so I end up spending a little time there at Princess Margaret School. However, I ended school in 1967 with a certain degree of frustration and what you may say, emotional trauma, in that during my early years in high school, I contemplated doing medicine. I remember contemplated that first. And then when I was not, what happened in the math section of school, I was like average in arithmetic. I was the best in geometry, but I had a terrible time with algebra. And so I never really managed to make that excellence in the overall math program. That led to some frustration. I decided, okay, I will join my brothers in the construction field by doing architecture or something along that line. And that was my personal decision until the summer of 1967. While I was there frustrated about what do I do next and feeling depressed about it now that I know from my education and psychology and counseling and all that stuff. Yes, it was, though nobody had diagnosed me or labeled it at that time, I can recognize it was a pretty depressing time for me. And just as I was dealing with that low in my life, I accompanied my brother Norbert and Fitzroy Browne, my adopted other brother. I accompanied them fishing around a place called Galling Point, which is at the tip of the island that you could see from Pigeon Point. And while they were fishing and I was basically keeping the tackling and the bait and so on, I wasn't really fishing. A huge wave came from almost, which we didn't see or take note of. And it really basically hit those bigger ones somewhat and then got me in that semi-cave situation and just lifted me and dumped me in the deep water around there. At that stage, at 18 years of age, I could not swim properly. I was doing dog paddling at that stage. I paddled and tried, and they threw me the line, and I heard my brother Norbert saying, "Swim, Silton, swim, swim." And I was swimming, and then I threw the line, and I held the line with one hand, but that couldn't do anything in getting me out. And I fought all I could until, to put it bluntly, until I gave up. I gave up and essentially figured that was the end of it. Apparently, it was at that time when I gave up that my face changed, my countenance changed from the worried, anxious look to a neutral, calm look. And that's when my brother Norbert, by the way, you may not know that one. That is the brother who was married to Maud Weaver, later became Theodore. Right. So that was that brother Norbert who I was very close to. And he, 2 weeks before he was married, 2 weeks before his wedding, he jumped over, and I heard him telling the story, he would say he jumped over when he saw me at that stage. He jumped over, well, to say the what you call it, the the colloquial expression. He said, when I see my good looking brother gone, face change, and come back and come looking good, he then said he jumped over saying Mar, calling his wife's name or wife to be name, and he jumped over and rescued me. For that reason, I have a bonding to several things water wise. I feel it is silly, it is just almost wrong for us to be living in the Caribbean with all these islands, with all this water and sea, and so glorious for everything nice, from swimming to kayaking to boating to, name it, that so many of our people cannot swim or would not swim. I feel very strongly about it. I feel passionate about it, which is why I have insisted on my children not only learning to swim from me after I got to learn to swim properly, but to have them get formal swimming education. And so it was after that rescue, because I'm aware of the question, but after that rescue, realizing that I was at my wits' end and kind of didn't see much, that I was thinking about where to go in my life, I realized I could have been dead. That could have been the end of me. And I said, okay, I now need to give my whole life, my complete life, over to God, not just accepting him as Savior. I need to give my whole life in ministry as well. I consider, therefore, my call to have come from that experience in the summer of 1967.
That's a pretty traumatic experience you had there. I'm glad the Lord saved you.
Yes.
And you decided at that particular point to surrender everything. And
That's correct. That's correct.
so how long did it take for you to decide to go to CUC, and what was the
Well,
experience like?
at that stage, and again, for to avoid a very lengthy answer, at that stage, I was already having a certain sense of independence. And while I knew, because I was last and my siblings were very concerned about me getting a proper education and so forth, I thought I would want to attempt to do it without depending on them too much. And so I went to St. Thomas with the express purpose of raising enough money to get started in college without having to count on my brother, on my siblings. And so I went to St. Thomas in 1968 March and worked down there for like a year and a half. Left there on August of 1969, and then I headed to Caribbean Union College, where I actually ended up starting my college work in 1970 with that class that was to be the first class to go straight on to a bachelor's degree, because prior to that, CUC used to only offer the 14th grade, the associate degree. But now from 1970, they were going straight to the bachelor's degree. So I was in that first class of students doing the bachelor's degree. And so I graduated in 1974 from Caribbean Union College at the time. It was called, now USC.
And I do understand that although you wanted to be very independent, that your brothers did assist you a lot
Well, as I said, that's almost an understatement, because when once I, in other words, when once I turned towards serious education and ministry in particular, I really had no lack for money and proper support. That's the truth. They were very willing and supported me tremendously. And I should point out, I didn't play lazy and just exploit their generosity. I still, apart from the money I had from St. Thomas, I was able basically to pay my first year or so. But then during the summers, I also did canvassing and augmented. What that meant then, with the brothers sending me money regularly, and I don't want to say the money was easy, but it's their hard earned money that they worked for. But it kind of became easy for them to all participate because they had a construction company called Browne Brothers Construction Company. And so basically, all I needed was a brother who would be diligent to send the money regular. And that was Haynes Browne, who saw to it that the Browne Brothers construction money would come to me regularly at CUC. Now, the truth is, I hate to I'm not sure I ever told them this, and well, they can't get vexed with me at this stage, but I was so comfortably taken care of that combining my own work as colporteur and so on in the summer with their support, that I was able to reach out a few times to other students who are having a real hard time and give them a little assistance, occasionally directly, but I have sometimes gone to the dean of men and said, listen, I want to help this person, but I don't want them to get it from me directly. So give this to so-and-so. So I've been able to do that because of the strong support of the Browne brothers and with Haynes kind of being steward of that, of sending that money off to me.
Well, it's really good to know when family members can be supportive to their siblings. But let's move on because, again, half our time has already expired.
Yeah, that's right.
You became a pastor. Can you quickly tell us what areas? I did mention some of it, youth ministry, etc. But share with us, how you left CUC, what happened, where did you serve, and what led you, what was the process to take you through presidency?
Okay, so let me see if I could give you that in rapid fire, and then we go on to that. After CUC, again, because of that support of my brothers, and I don't have time to go into the details otherwise, because I almost didn't go to Andrews University, but several of us wanted to go to Andrews University right after our bachelor's degree because we smelled the joy of scholarship and achievement. But some of the brighter ones, they didn't have the money. And Andrews University promised two of them scholarship if they would wait one more year. So 1 year later. And we had said, we're not going without, we preferably want to have at least 4 of us go to Andrews University after the CUC BTH program, but definitely not less than 2 of us. Well, guess what? The others could not come up with the money, and I almost didn't go, but something told me, listen, you have to be a man sometime. And if you have your brothers supporting you, willing to see you through when you want to do your master's, you better go. I'm glad I did. So I went to Andrews University again because of that support. And I was able to get my master's degree right after. And because I was the only student, I was evaluated, from CUC, or the first bachelor student there. I didn't even know that the Andrews University was communicating to Dr. Ben, the president, about how well I was doing and the quality of the program and all the rest of it. It was my girlfriend who told me that came up at this school assembly, ASB assembly, and the statement read and so on. And so I went to Andrews University and graduated there in 1975, August. Because once there are a number of circumstances that said, listen, I couldn't afford to waste time trying to work in the States. Let me rush and get out of here. And so I applied myself, completed my master's program, and was in the field as of September 1, 1975. Now, here's my tenure in rapid fire. September 1, 1975, I was asked to go to Antigua and assist Pastor Trotman in a crusade that he was being conducted there until they could decide where to assign me to do internship. While I was with Pastor Trotman in that crusade, sometime there in October, November, I got word that because the North Caribbean Conference was being formed as of January 1, 1976, Pastor Carnegie and the intern with him, Pastor Carnegie is going to St. Croix to be the education director. And so they need somebody to hold on to Montserrat until they could find an ordained minister. Pastor Carnegie left and the intern, and they sent me to Montserrat in charge of 5 churches, a school bus, 2 radio programs, etc. Pastor Carnegie continued to speak at one of the radio programs. And so I got my feet wet in a big way with serious responsibility. And I carried that for about 5 months or so from December of 1975. And then they found the pastor in Guyana who came there about May of that year. And with that, I was assigned shortly after that to be pastor in St. John in the Virgin Islands. So as of July, I was now assigned to St. John, Virgin Islands. I went to camp in St. Kitts assisting Pastor Fleming.
So if I could interrupt you a little bit, because it sounds to me like you're actually saying that you really did not do an internship.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm getting. You did work with that crusade with Pastor Trotman. And you were sent from there to pastor in Montserrat.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And that's the truth. I have not had 4 months with any pastor to be considered an internship. Here's another big irregularity later on in life that's part of my own experience. And I also was supervised an intern with an MDiv in Tortola for 1 year before I was ordained. Pastor Ernan Norman did his internship with me in Tortola. By the time I was sent to St. John from that Montserrat connection, I spent 2.25 years in St. John. Then I was assigned to Tortola, the British Virgin Islands. And there I had to oversee not only the 3 churches on Tortola, but also supervise Virgin Gorda and a little work we had going on in Anegada as well. And so I was there, and that's why they sent Pastor Erna Norman, and he was with me for a year before now. We set the conference now allowed him to go to Virgin Gorda on his own after 1 year with me, and I just sort of dialogue with him occasionally. And so that's the run of things in my life. There seemed to have been a great deal of trust in whatever there is about me. I don't know, but that has been the background of my ministry. And so here was I in Tortola now, where I served for 4 years. That now has me, I was ordained there in Tortola in 1980, same time with Pastor Roosevelt Daniel. And then 2 years after that, while being in Tortola, I was called to be the youth director of the North Caribbean Conference. So I served as youth director of the North Caribbean Conference from 1982. Those years, they were 3-year terms. And so I served for 4 3-year terms from 1982 to 1994 as youth director of the conference. And then in 1994, when Pastor Trotman succeeded B.N. Josiah, I was elected secretary of the North Caribbean Conference. North Caribbean Conference, and thereafter, in 1997, I was not elected to any position. I was assigned pastor of St. Thomas, Shiloh, and Agape churches. So that was my assignment between 1997 and 2005. You want me to go right to the end? So you see, I've covered the whole span. Yes, go ahead.
Now you of course you are now retired, and I do remember that experience. Of course I was a pastor then. I remember when you were secretary. I remember when you were not reelected, and I remember when you were assigned to St. Thomas. But I want to ask you a personal question on that.
Go ahead.
You know, having served in administration and then after an election, elections can be very interesting experiences in the Seventh Adventist Church.
That's correct. You're right.
And you were not returned. Can you what was the experience like? What were the emotions like?
Wow. Okay. Thanks for asking that. That experience was sobering for me, but it sure did not break me by any means. In fact, it's one of the best things that happened to me and one of the best segments of my ministry. And it is significant to observe. Now, it's interesting you asked that question. So let me say it a whole other strange way, which I think people wouldn't know. You know, and that's the other reason, other thing I'd say to any young person. I heard you ask a number of persons about number of young people having desire to be department directors and in administration and so on and so on. That has never been on my agenda as something to crave or want. What I would say to any such person, but I'm not saying anything is wrong to want that if you are delivering and have something to bring to the table. It is interesting, Pastor, that you would ask that question when what I know for myself and muse about over and over is that the time that the brethren did not return me to office was the time when I gave the most, when I was most productive to this church in my entire 42 years. Now, that is a big mouthful, and I know you are confused yourself. So let me unpack that for you. While you may know me as the executive secretary at that time, I was also the ministerial director. That is a bad combination. They no longer kind of combine those two because it's almost a conflict of interest. I had to play that role carefully. I still remember talking to a Bible worker, Sister Ellis, when she asked something. I said, now, how do you want me to answer you? As an administrator or as a ministerial, as a ministerial secretary? They used to say secretary in those days, ministerial secretary as opposed to ministerial director. She said, well, I don't know what's the difference. And then I explained to her the perspective of an administrator versus the fact that as a ministerial director, I would be, as it were, on her side to defend and represent her to administration. But since I'm both now, and so I ended up giving her counsel in the context of both sides, showing her the two ways to view her situation, and essentially sought to protect her and have her protect herself by how she approached the issue. Now, so I carried that combination of secretary, executive secretary, and ministerial director at the same time. Here is something most people do not know or we may not remember. They had just tried to introduce the 60-20-20 plan about 2 or 3 years prior to that. It was a dismal failure in the North Caribbean Conference. It was totally resisted, and I challenge anybody to check the facts and see what happened to the performance of the North Caribbean Conference on the 60-20-20 plan as of 1994. And I know what they will find here. Because of that, since I was youth director, advocating, because there was a time when the committee sought to ask that North Caribbean Conference be excluded from that program. And I remember as a committee member saying, brethren, I think what we need to do, rather than being the ones not cooperating, is to see the benefits of this program and sell the program properly. The program needs to be sold to the brethren properly. And I'm not sure that has been done. So when I became secretary plus ministerial director, they then asked me to be a special promoter of the 60-20-20 plan. And I went to various islands, meeting with the boards of the most difficult churches, because that was happening. Some people cooperated nicely, a few, but there were some resistant churches. And those resistant churches, I met with them board by board, educated and defended the program, brought them along, and that's how we were brought. It's at the end of that kind of thing. Oh, lastly, hold a minute, because I think this is the one that irritated a number of people. I initiated what was a real attendance survey. I got count of how many people were in the churches during divine service, because I was concerned about conservation right from the beginning while I was in college. And so I came to ministry watching the decrease, and I actually did the survey and put it down on paper, showing that there were about 52% of the book membership in attendance at church. The top 10 churches had about 36%, and the top 5 churches, when I say top, I mean largest membership, their average attendance was 36%, and the highest 5 membership in our conference was 32%. And I put all that, it seemed as if that kind of what I would now call diligence became offensive to some people. That some people say that embarrassed ministry and all that kind of stuff. And so I was sent to St. Thomas. Well, hold a minute. I didn't go around cursing and blaming anybody and the politics and all that stuff. I got into St. Thomas, and I got to work to address all of those concerns. The membership attendance issue, I addressed all the things I taught in youth ministry that folk weren't applying. I chose to begin to apply them in my churches. What the things I was recommending to my pastors as director, that they were now, because remember, Mark Finley's first net program was, I think, net 94. And I was telling them, I didn't think there was much to that, but it seemed as if it's working some places, so give it a try. Nobody seriously gave it a try. I mean, well, I should say seriously, systematically as such. And so when I was placed in St. Thomas, I just went to work on all these things, including doing net 98 with Dwight Nelson. We did that in my district in St. Thomas, and baptized
Pastor,
32 people.
We have about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So we're going to try to fit a lot of things into that.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, I have to choose my questions carefully, because I don't want to. Let's just go back a little bit to your. Maybe I should ask it this way. What would you consider to be some of you have identified some very significant things you did there, the attendance factor, etc. But as it relates perhaps to the young people, what would you consider to be some of your more significant accomplishments?
Now help me, Lord. Okay. Some things are not measurable, but I had a passion for the substance of the program to be applied above just getting badges, etc. Okay. And so I advocated on that. But I chose to be creative, be bold, be strategic. And so I did different things and new things in youth ministry. For example, we did the music experience. That special workshop on music. I knew our young people love music and love to sing. I watched them go to camp on Thursday afternoon, and we opened camp on Thursday afternoon. Friday is the first day of camp, and those young people come together. Many of them give up their free time and recreation time on that Friday afternoon and sang, be part of a camp choir. And next morning, Sabbath morning, I have a choir that sounds mature, well rehearsed, with responses and an anthem. And I say, what if we were to focus just, let's say, a full weekend with something like that, just on music alone? What might not happen? Out of that, by my third year, 1985, I had the first music experience in St. Martin with about 200 young people coming together under the direction of Dr. Andrews and his team of musicians, including my wife, Charmin Buddy, Mrs. Sister Trotman, etc. And that's an experience that went down big with the young people and continued for the entire 4 terms of my presidency. Each time in the third year of that term, we would have a music experience. Tortola was our favorite spot. That's where we had the second one. And, and that went well. So music experience is something that's new, that's different. How I add certain things to camp. The community day service, where a day of camp is put into connecting with the community and doing things. I didn't meet a template for these things. You have to be creating things and then trying to be strategic in terms of your mission and so on. And so we met with you have to be relevant. And so that kind of thing is where I have sort of gone in my music thing. And then in St. Thomas on the youth thing, we were invited to participate by the Boy Scouts in the regatta, Royak Regatta. We trained our young people with the month and a half we had, borrowing their kayaks and going on the thing. And our pathfinders, after a month and a half rehearsal, were able to win the Boy Scout Royak Regatta. And I remember saying to my directors, listen, I keep saying, that's me over there on the far left from where I'm saying. And I kept saying, listen, I kept saying to people, we can't just be telling our young people, you can't, don't. We must have some do's. We must have some exciting do's for them to be engaged in. So the same crusade that brought in 32 people in 1998, we dedicated 12 kayaks, 6 2-man and 6 1-man, and were able to have our young people go kayaking between St. Thomas and St. John. Again, the community is involved. We raise money, call it a kayakathon. The sponsors supported, and we raised over $10,000 for 4 straight years that I was there. Once we started this program, and as a result, they were able to raise a lot of funds for the community. We gave 60% to the community and kept 25% for the Pathfinder, and later on 40-60. Yes.
Well, Pastor, yeah, we did share some of the photos there.
Yes, I noticed that.
But I have to get this question in because our time has almost expired. What as a retired president, as you look, you have done so much. I've seen so many comments in the chat, and there were some questions that we didn't get a chance to deal with. But What are your concerns for the church today?
Elder, I see people basically following the routine of following what was there, etc., who that may not be, in other words, I am seeing a lack of strategic agility. In other words, we pass the days of just strategic plans. And by the way, to your sir, you have been perhaps the most strategic of the pastors I've known in my time. I even got some pushback when folk wanted you to be in line with what the division or the union was saying, and I'd say, give Pastor Greene a break because he has a clear strategic plan, and so let him build that into the program of the higher organization, but don't stop him on what he's doing. And that's what we need to have. People who have a clear plan. They need to be bold. They need to be relevant and strategic. They need to be sensitive and, of course, creative in their leadership. Those are the things that have been of great value to me in my leadership. I must be willing to sort of break from the mold to do what is necessary at this point in time and with all of the changes that we have had. And now we have just come out of COVID and the kind of stuff. AI is coming big for lots of people, positive and negative about it. We need to be on the cutting edge of that. Our leaders, our pastors must understand. I mean, I'm saying each one must be tech savvy, but engage those who have the ability. That's what happened to me in St. Thomas, with Net 98. I engaged the young people of the church who had the skills, and Glenn and Hester, they were there for us with their expertise, and we were able to do big things and new things, and the impact was significant.
Now let me ask you about the T-shirt and the protest.
Oh, yes. So, oh, have mercy. You see all those kayaks, and so you just put up there, and
Yes.
one of them, the one that you had with us at the sea, we were going to Tortola. Now, this was since I became president in 2014, because even though I left there and became into the presidency, I kind of kept touch base with young people. And this T-shirt is St. Thomas St. John Kayakers. St. Thomas St. John Kayakers. That's what's marked on it. Okay. And yes. Now, interestingly, take note. This particular picture, don't change this one, please. You could leave it there. Note what's marked on the side here. Ocean kayaks. Now, here's my story. This particular picture is here on St. Croix. One district asked me to teach them kayaking. While I was president, I did it. And 2014, on March 1, that's the picture on March 1. We were all set on the beach to go over to Buck Island, kayaking to Buck Island, similar to what we're doing in St. Thomas, from St. John to St. Thomas. We were to go then, but because the waves were marginally too high, the authorities didn't allow us to go with all those young people on that trip. And so we ended up kayaking more along the shoreline of St. Croix coming back. Okay, so to close all that in now on the shirt then. On Wednesday, I was not at prayer meeting. I was with the government school, invited by a Seventh Adventist teacher as an experienced kayaker to accompany their students going to the bioluminescence bay in the evening of Wednesday. And I was with them. When I put on the shirt, too smart to start, my wife said, that has on some stain. Take that off. So I went to this one. Because, again, strategically, I'm looking for an opportunity to, as you may say, witness or connect with these young people. So I wore this shirt with them to kayak. But, brother, I got there where the government gave them a grant to pay to $50 for these children to go out there and see the bioluminescent stuff and so forth. And here was I in that group, as an experienced kayaker with them, watching stars, the moon, the things we do in our thing, and they were using the same kayak brand, Ocean Kayaks, okay? And that is what, and as I saw that and realized that right here in St. Croix, we have 20 something of those kayaks lying idle. In St. Thomas, they have 30 something of them lying idle. Sometimes we just don't get it in terms of engaging, being relevant, connecting with our young people in a way that is constructive and productive as we seek to lead them to Christ and help them to enjoy being a Christian. The young ladies with their hands up, that's one of my favorite pictures, because I like to see young people happy and enjoying the church. And even though I'm old, that's kind of where I'm at. That's my wish for them.
So I get the point with the shirt now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, our time has expired.
Yes, sir.
But I want to express profound gratitude to you. I've said this often that, you have had significant impact on my life. And particularly with the fact that, you can speak straight, you're not afraid to call me out on something if you see that I'm doing something inappropriate. And I really do appreciate that. I want to thank you for sharing. I'm beginning to think we should have scheduled two sessions for you.
Stop it.
Nevertheless, we have to end it here.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I 30 seconds. I am glad we could come to the end without me talking about money woes at the beginning. but the most important sort of satisfaction I have is that we were able to do solar panels to run the conference that save us the equivalent of about 113,000 a year by taking that twist. Thank you.
Well, we have spent the last month with retired presidents, and hopefully next week we are going to close out this with having a couple of you who is available just to highlight some of the issues that were raised and to talk about that, because I'm really concerned about the future of the church. And the fact that we are never to forget God's mission.
Exactly.
So thank you, Pastor Browne. Thank you so much for sharing with us. There were lots of comments, lots of folks from various places giving you shout outs. But our time went by so very quickly. So may God bless you as you continue in your retirement years. I know that I did learn some time ago that you're pretty occupied doing painting and all those kinds of things.
Yes, oh yes, I didn't get to tell you that.
but we hope to have you back on Let's Talk. Hopefully, maybe next week if you have the time, we're going to be talking to some of the issues. So may God bless you. And to all of our viewers from wherever you are listening, we will be back next week, 3 p.m. For another edition of Let's Talk, and we hope to see you there. God bless.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. God bless you now.